My name is Trish VanOsdel, and in the broad scope, I work with multimedia materials, putting together basically abstract ideas of what is inside our bodies, possibly, or what we may be trying to hide from others about ourselves. Right now, most of my work is in steel wool, but materials always vary to the idea.
Okay. So like you'd use different things for different ideas that you're working with?
Right now I'm working on the Skeleton and Muses. That's been going on for quite a while.
Okay.
And that's really is about what internally our fears, and whether they are physical fears or mental fears, or things that we don't necessarily want to share with the general public. And then our muses that tell us we need to share those things,
yeah,
to communicate with others, and then how society responds to that too.
I would like to talk a little bit more about the steel wool medium. There's a lot of things that I find really interesting about the way that you use it. And I know you talk in your statement a little bit about some of the reasons why you use it. If you wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about some of those reasons.
Sure. So I grew up, my family owned a machine shop, and there were a lot of materials around for me to use, and I tried many different materials, and steel wool just kind of stuck in the back of my mind of someday I'm going to use that. I'm not sure what I'll use it for, but it'll present itself at the time. And I was probably in grad school when I thought, oh, I'd really like to knit some steel wool. And so I did. I knitted some sweaters, and it did transform the material, but it still talked about a type of wool. And it was viewed as something that was very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And this, pretty much everything that I've done in steel wool does connote that sense of discomfort. But I also try to seduce the viewer into thinking, maybe I should look at this again. Maybe it's not as harsh as I think it might be. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. So I didn't use it for quite a while until I believe it was 2010. I was in a show at Wichita Art Museum that was Art of Adornment. And I knew exactly right away I was going to make some wigs out of this steel wool because it has such that connotation of hair.
Right.
So I made these wigs, and when I went online to buy a large amount of steel wool, I found out that there's not just steel wool, but there's brass wool, there's copper wool, there's bronze wool. And so I've tried them all, and I've just developed this love for this material. Some of them are very soft, and there's coarse, and there's fine, and but they all can be transformed and manipulated in a way that's very again, seductive or engaging. People want to touch it. They're very tactile. Right. Yeah.
And one of the things that I like particularly about this wig, and I think you talk a little bit about it in your statement, this idea that these things that were made for kind of for beauty or adornment, like you were just saying, but also are painful. Yes. It would be painful to touch that.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that dichotomy of I don't know.
Yes, right. There are a lot of things that we do, and certainly in past history, especially women wearing corsets and things that restrict us in a way, but we want to present ourselves, that overriding feeling of wanting to present yourself in a certain way,
right.
As opposed to how you might feel, how uncomfortable you are. Let's see. There's also that and I think looking at the piece behind you, the wig, that kind of tells you that story in a way. It's very beautiful, but there's something wrong. There's all these curls that are growing around it like ivy that look like they would restrict it or suffocate it in some way. Things that are dragging it down. So I really feel like there's a yin and a yang to those types of things.
Yeah. And I love that, the way too that it comes down, the curls go all the way around the bottom of that chair, and it almost is like it's trapped in that space by its own like existence.
Yeah. I feel like it could grow. Maybe, you know, at some point it'll fill a room.
Just take over. Yeah, that would be really cool to just see that, like, expanding. So this, I mean, we talked a little bit about this idea, but the title, like Betrayal of Beauty, did you want to talk a little bit more about how, I mean, you came up with that idea, and you've done quite a bit with wigs as well, correct?
Yes. And talking about the Betrayal of Beauty, it's really, again, about how we wish people to perceive us, and at what cost do we go to fulfill that for ourselves. Do we go under the knife? Do we, again, constrict our bodies? How far do we go to manipulate ourselves? Do we wear this 10-pound wig to make ourselves look the way we want to present ourselves?
One of the things that I thought was really interesting, like reading through your statement again, especially now with COVID-19 and everything happening.
Absolutely,
do talk a lot about like biology. I think specifically you reference like these foreign elements and these ideas of things being invasive. And I wonder if you could kind of expand on that idea.
Right. So in 2014, my brother passed away with cancer. And right after he passed away, I was invited to be in this show that was about the layers of creativity. And could I illustrate the very lowest level, how the spark of an idea. And so still using the steel wool, I started winding it around rods and kind of letting these forms envelop or create. And they were very organic. They were almost looked like, and I suspended them from the ceiling, so they look like sea creatures or giant sails. In fact, with COVID, seeing that the construct of the cell or what the cell looks like is very much like some of the pieces that I had been doing. And so we know these things exist in our body, but a lot of times we don't know what they look like, what they physically look like. So all of a sudden we're seeing this image pop up everywhere. So the more forms that I made that were suspended, the more elaborate they became. And I had already done the wigs a few years prior, so I basically was combining the two ideas, how these illnesses, diseases, cells, or these foreign bodies can change our makeup. It was really interesting. I would string them up and they would be almost like a forest, and I could walk through them. And it reminded me, I don't know if you have ever seen that old movie, and I think it was like Fantastic Voyage with Raquel Welch, and these scientists are shrunk down and in this submarine, and they are injected into this man's body, and the things that they come across are very much like these giant foreign forests and elements that they experience and go through. And my other brother just recovered from COVID, and he was in the hospital on a ventilator for 10 days. And same kind of idea. I mean, it was consuming him. And so this idea of these foreign elements, however small they start, basically do or can consume us. just like we can be consumed by society and how we want to present ourselves, I suppose. Yeah.
Because the biennial is specific to the Mountain Plains region, and one of the purposes of this exhibition is to highlight the artists that are working within this region. So I have been asking everybody, what does it mean to be an artist within the Mountain Plains region?
It means I have a lot of space to do what I want to do for the most part. And that's really precious. I lived in New York for graduate work, and the landscape was beautiful, but it was also claustrophobic for me because I had always grown up in the Midwest. So I really enjoy the space and being able to spread out the work or not worry about how large the work can be. And I think the communities here are very supportive of the art. Yeah, I feel like every small town, every city in the Plains have their own small art community, whether it's visual arts or performing arts or whatever it is, they have it. I mean, it gives their life that enrichment.
One last question. Is there anything in particular that you're working on right now in your studio or preparing for anything else?
Well, I have a show with my husband, Trish VanOsdel, coming up at the San Zane Gallery 1 year from August. And I'll be doing more wigs, more suspended pieces. Because it's a large space, I hope to do very large installations. So I'm very excited. There'll be a lot of work.
Yeah, that's exciting though. It's really
it is. It is, and it's an art community, a really rich art community there. So I'm excited about that.